Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be chatting about flashes at receptions. Everything that we're going to be covering today could go into ceremonies or getting ready, any part of the day that you need to use a flash. This video will be super helpful for you. Now in this video we're going to be covering off-camera flash, video lights, bouncing your flash off the ceiling or off the wall, and when it's appropriate to use two flashes or just one. We're going to be going over all of that. And for those of you who are new to my channel, I'm a fine art wedding photographer based in Niagara and Toronto. And I love creating content that will help other photographers. And I do also offer workshops and one-on-one mentoring. So I'll make sure to link those below, so if you want to check them out or send me a message. All right, let's get into it. So there's some times on a wedding day when the reception starts really quickly. I've just finished the bride and groom portraits and now I'm running to the reception to get set up and figure out the flash situation. Now there's times where I'm running in and then the entrances are starting within the next 5 minutes. So sometimes I do just stick to the one flash, especially if the room is already super bright and airy. I don't need to use two flashes, so I can usually get away with one flash. But in a lot of scenarios, I love pulling in a second flash, especially when there's enough time. So I'll go ahead and grab a second flash and set it up on a stand. And that way I can have two flashes going, and it really brings so much light into the room, and it does create those bright and airy photographs so that my gallery can be consistent from the start of the day to the end of the day. So we'll quickly talk first about just shooting flash in general, just using one flash, and then we'll kind of build up from there into the different techniques and different things that you can do. Right now I have the two Canon 600 EX RT flashes. I also just bought the Godox V1S for my Sony camera. But for the most part, these are the ones that I've always used in all my photos. So when it comes to just using one flash on your camera, most of the time I'm bouncing off of the ceiling or off of the wall. Now, if the wall's close enough to me, I preferably like to bounce off of the wall just because I find that it gives an overall softer effect. But the wall does have to be a neutral color for that to work. So most of the time, as soon as I'm walking into a reception, I look around and I see where the best spot to bounce my flash is going to be. If the ceiling's white, then that's perfect. If the walls are a light gray or some sort of neutral or white, then that's perfect as well, and I know I can bounce off the wall or the ceiling. Now there's times where maybe the walls are brown or they're a really bright colored, then I know right away I need to bounce off of the ceiling because I don't want those colors reflecting into the photographs. And if you point your flash against a red wall, now the whole picture is going to be this really weird color and the skin tones are going to be horrible. So you really want to make sure that you're only bouncing off of neutral colors. So when I'm bouncing off the ceiling, typically my flash is just pointed straight up, just like this on my camera. And then when I'm shooting at the walls, I like to do like a 45-degree angle towards the walls. Now you want to be careful because if sometimes you have it pointed straight down, then you might accidentally hit a guest, flash them in the eye. So you definitely want to be careful with that. I don't use any diffusers or pull out this thing on my camera. I just shoot it the way it is. And I find that I get really beautiful photographs just using this bounced at the ceiling or the walls. Now when it comes to your camera settings, this is the biggest part because a lot of people tend to shoot in TTL. So they're not using this in manual and they're not getting the most out of their flash. With my camera settings, I like to have my aperture around 2 or 2.8 when I'm shooting the reception, especially for the candids or when there's speeches going on. I'm using an 85mm and I like to shoot it at 2 or 2.8. And I always would rather raise my ISO on my camera than have to higher the flash output just because I want to keep the batteries lasting as long as possible. Now with the Canon flashes, they do use rechargeable AA batteries, whereas my Godox flash, it does have its own rechargeable battery, which lasts a lot longer than these Canon flashes. Now, when it comes to the settings of the flash, I like to play around with my camera settings first. And so right away, I know that my shutter speed needs to be on the lower end, unless it's for the entrances. I want to make sure that my shutter speed is at 1/60th or 200th of a second. That way I'm not capturing too much movement, I'm capturing them still, and there's no blur in the photographs. But when it comes to the rest of the reception, when I'm shooting speeches and when I'm shooting candids of the guests, I like to turn my shutter speed down to 80th of a second or 100th of a second. That way it really lets the ambient light into the room. Otherwise, if you're just using a flash and you have a really high shutter speed, then you're not gonna be getting that bright and airy photograph because the light's gonna fall off right after your subjects and you're gonna have a dark background. But if you can open up the aperture and open up the shutter speed, then the background's gonna be nice and bright. Overall, you're gonna have this beautiful ambient look to your photograph, and your flash is gonna act more as a fill than as a main light. And that's what I want with my flashes. I don't want them to be the main light source or to look like the main light source. I really want the ambient light of the room to fill my photographs, and then the flashes just act as a fill and fill in any harsh shadows on the person's face and in the room. So after I've adjusted my settings, I got my shutter speed all set, my aperture, my ISO is maybe at 1600 or 2000, then I can go ahead and play with my flash. With my flash, I'm usually shooting at 1/16 or 1/8. I really don't want to use too much power for my flash because again, the batteries will die faster. So for the most part, I'm raising the ISO on my camera and then just adding the flash as a fill light. Now, when it comes to using two flashes at a reception, I love using this during the entrances, during the first dances, or if the reception hall is very dark, then it's nice to have this flash even just sitting in the corner of a room on a stand, adding that extra fill light. And when I do put it in the corner of the room on a stand, I'll just usually have it pointed straight up at the ceiling, and it will just brighten that side of the room and help me to overall make the images brighter. But usually when I'm doing a 2-camera setup, I'll have the one flash on my camera, and I'll typically just have this one again pointed at the ceiling or pointed at the walls. And then for my second flash, I'll put this on a stand, and for my stands I add this little guy on. I just bought it off Amazon. It's way cheaper than at Henry's. I think I got a 2-pack of these for like $30, where at Henry's you're paying $30 or $40 just for one. So I highly recommend going on Amazon, and I'll make sure to link that below. So I'll go ahead and have this flash set up on a stand, and typically I just point it straight down or kind of like at a 45 degrees. And the stand level is about my height or a little bit shorter, so it's around 5 feet. Now, when it comes to setting up this flash, I like to have it so it's directly across from me. So I'll put it behind the subjects, or even as they're entering the room, I'll have it off to the side a bit. And then that way, as they're entering, it's giving me that nice direct backlight. And then sometimes I'm just using it as a side light, so it just illuminates the room a bit more, adds some more layers, adds some more dimension to the photographs. Typically, I like to have it as almost a hair light, especially when it comes to the first dances. I love setting this up across from me and getting the couple to fully cover the flash. So the flash is illuminating them from behind. It creates this really beautiful angelic look, adds that dimension to the photograph so they're popping from the background. It's really nice, especially in dark reception where the background is really dark and there's not much adding to the background. And when it comes to settings for my flash, the first flash is always around 1/16 or 1/8. But when it comes to the second flash, I like to have this as low as possible. So I'll even put this at 132 or 64. I really don't want much output coming from this flash. It's more just a fill light, a hair light. It's not supposed to be the main light. And if the output is too high on here, you'll end up getting a lot of lens flare, and it makes it really hard to deal with and hard to shoot with. So that's why I like putting this at 64 or 32. And that way it really is just like a little pop of flare, and I don't have to worry about this overwhelming light coming from the background. So that is key, making sure that you put it at a 64 or 32. When it comes to setting these two guys up together, I know a lot of people get scared about the thought of having to trigger 2 flashes and what does that look like and how do you do it, but it's actually a lot easier than you think. So what you want to do is, first I'll have them both on ETTL. And then my main flash that's going on my camera is the one that I play with first, because I want this one to be my master, not my slave. since this is going to be on my camera and I'm going to need it to control the second flash. I'm going to go ahead and play with the first flash. I'm going to keep clicking this button right here until I see master come up. And as soon as I've gotten master to come up, I'll begin playing with this flash. And then I go ahead and start clicking through on this one. And pretty much all I'm looking for now is for this light up here to turn green. As soon as that turns green, I know that they're both connected and they're both working together. Perfect. So that one just turned green. So you can see that they both turn green, which means that they're in sync, they're working together. I have the master, which is gonna go on the top of my camera, and I have the slave, which is gonna be off camera on a stand. And having this one as a master is important, so if I need to change anything quickly, I can go ahead on here and adjust this flash without having to go over to it, which is really nice if I'm trying to move fast. So now that they're both set up and that they're linked together and it's green, I'm gonna go ahead and grab the first flash and I'm gonna press the mode button. You can see that there's many different modes to choose from. I definitely want manual, so that way I can choose the power output of both of my flashes. And then by pressing this button right here, I can go ahead and add more flashes. You'll see A, B, C, and then eventually it just goes back to 1. This is where it's really important to set your main flash at 1/8 or 1/16, and then go ahead and press the button to add the second flash. So go ahead and add B right there. And then now I can play with B. And so I'm gonna go ahead and put flash B at around 64 or 32 for the power output. And so there you go. I have 2 flashes set up, one that's gonna be on my camera set at 1/8, and then I'm gonna have the second flash set on a stand and it's gonna be at a 64 or something really low so that it's not putting out too much power output. Sometimes I'll also add a video light. So these are ones that I just bought off Amazon, and I'll add these video lights if the room is really dark and I just want that extra little flare, so add some more light in. Then I'll set this up on a stand on full power and I'll have it across from my other flash, which you can see here in this picture. Now these are really nice also for cake cutting photos, photos of the guests. If I go around to each table, then I can use these. They're also good for sparkler photos. If there's not enough light coming from the sparklers, you can always try adding a video light so that you don't have to raise your ISO crazy high. I find that this is a little bit softer feeling than a flash. And you can also choose how soft or how bright you want it to be. It's also really nice because you can choose the warmness of it also. Now these are some pretty cheap video lights. I think they're $30 or $40 each, but you can definitely get higher end ones where you can set the temperature electronically. Okay, and lastly, when it comes to dancing photos, there's a few things that I do. So sometimes I'll do the off-camera flash setup, so I'll have 2 flashes going, which adds a really nice effect. And then there's other times where I only have 1 flash to work with, like when I went to Mexico recently, I couldn't really bring a bunch of equipment, I couldn't bring stands, so I did just use 1 flash. And so in those scenarios, I kind of like to have fun with it, and I point the flash directly at people. And now this is where you want to be quick, you want to just take the shot and then move out, move to a different spot. So I'm not taking a photo of the same person multiple times because I don't want to blind them. This adds a really fun effect during dancing photos, and I'll show some of the dancing photos here. I put my camera at ISO 100. I put the aperture way up to 6 or 7 to really get everybody in focus, which is fun to look at later because then you'll start noticing people in the photographs that you didn't even notice before, or people making funny faces. So I really like that effect of having everyone in focus. And then shooting at really low shutter speeds. So I was shooting at 1/8 or 1/4, and that drags the shutter speed, and that really allows all that ambient light. And if there's any DJ lights happening, then you'll see that they can kind of get dragged through the photo, which adds a really cool effect. The first set of photos, I didn't add any zoom flash, so it was still just covering the whole dance floor. And then near the end, I actually zoomed my flash in, which is really easy to do. There's a button that you just click that zooms it in, and I think I went to 100 or 110 millimeters. And that really created this spotlight effect where it was just focused on the one person, and then everything else around it was dark. So those can create some really cool and fun dancing photos. I also use a 24-70 for my dancing photos, so you'll see that in these photos, which is really nice because I could get in super close to the subject but them still look far away from the lens. And it's just a really nice lens to get multiple people in the photo and to get that party kind of feel. I found that when I used a 50mm, it just wasn't wide enough to capture everything in the photo. So make sure to use a 24 or a 35 or a 24-70 when shooting those dance floor shots. Well, I hope that this video was helpful for you. Please let me know if you have any questions below. If there's different techniques or things that you do, I would love to hear them as well, so make sure to share them. If you like this video, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe below, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.